There is something that happens in the silence of the night that no one talks about openly. You fall asleep without much trouble. Maybe you even feel tired enough to drift off the moment your head touches the pillow. But then, somewhere around 3 in the morning, your eyes snap open. Not gently, not gradually. It is sudden, almost violent, like someone flipped a switch inside your brain. Your heart is beating faster than it should. Your mind is already racing, even though you were not dreaming about anything stressful. And the worst part is, you cannot fall back asleep. You lie there, staring at the ceiling in the dark, feeling this strange electricity running through your body, wondering what on earth just happened. And it is not just once. It is not a random bad night. It keeps happening. 3 in the morning, sometimes 2:45, sometimes 3:15, but always in that same cruel window. Night after night, week after week, until it becomes the thing you dread most, not the morning alarm, not the long day ahead, but that invisible clock inside you that seems determined to wake you up when the rest of the world is still asleep. I have sat across from hundreds of women who described this exact experience to me, and almost every single one of them said the same thing before anything else. I think it is anxiety. I think something is wrong with my mind. I think I am losing control. Some of them had already been to other doctors. Some had been prescribed sleeping pills. Others were told it was stress, that they needed to relax more, meditate, drink chamomile tea. A few had been put on antidepressants, not because they were depressed, but because no one could figure out what else to do. But here is what I have learned after years of listening to these women, studying their blood work, tracking their symptoms, and watching what actually works and what does not. This is not anxiety. This is not stress. And it is certainly not something wrong with your mind. What is happening at 3 in the morning inside your body is hormonal. And the hormone responsible for stealing your sleep is one that most doctors never even think to check. Let me explain what I mean, because this changed the way I practice medicine. Your body runs on rhythms, not just the obvious ones, like sleeping at night and being awake during the day. There are deeper, more intricate rhythms happening inside you every single hour. One of the most important is your cortisol rhythm. Cortisol is your alertness hormone. It is supposed to be at its lowest around midnight, allowing your body to sink into deep, restorative sleep. Then, slowly, it begins to rise in the early morning hours, around 5 or 6, so that by the time your alarm goes off, you feel naturally awake and ready to move. That is the healthy pattern. That is what is supposed to happen. But during perimenopause and menopause, something shifts. And it shifts in a way that most women never see coming. As estrogen levels begin to fluctuate and decline, sometimes dramatically from one week to the next, the entire hormonal communication system inside your body starts to lose its coordination. Estrogen does not just regulate your reproductive cycle. It plays a critical role in regulating neurotransmitters in the brain, including serotonin, which is a direct precursor to melatonin, your sleep hormone. When estrogen drops, serotonin production falters. When serotonin drops, melatonin production weakens. And suddenly, the chemical that was supposed to keep you asleep through the night is no longer being produced in sufficient quantities. But that is only half the story. The other half involves progesterone, and this is where it gets truly fascinating. Progesterone is not just a reproductive hormone. It is one of the most powerful natural calming agents your body produces. It works by enhancing the activity of a neurotransmitter called GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, which is essentially your brain's own tranquilizer. GABA quiets neural activity, reduces overexcitation, and allows your brain to transition into the deep stages of sleep where real restoration happens. When progesterone levels are healthy, your brain has a built-in sedative system that keeps you calm, relaxed, and deeply asleep through the night. Now here is the problem. Progesterone is one of the first hormones to decline as you enter perimenopause. In many women, it starts dropping years before estrogen does, years before hot flashes, years before irregular periods. And because progesterone's decline is so quiet, so invisible, most women do not even know it is happening. They just know that they cannot sleep anymore. They just know that they feel wired at night. They just know that their brain will not shut off. And that is when cortisol takes over. Without progesterone's calming influence, without adequate GABA activity, the brain becomes hyperreactive. The adrenal glands, sensing this state of neural agitation, begin releasing cortisol earlier than they should. Instead of waiting until 5 or 6 in the morning, cortisol starts surging at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. And when cortisol spikes, it does exactly what it is designed to do. It wakes you up. It increases your heart rate. It sharpens your senses. It floods your muscles with glucose for energy. Your body essentially goes into a mini fight-or-flight response in the middle of the night, even though there is nothing to fight and nowhere to flee. You are just lying in bed, wide awake, with your heart pounding and your mind spinning, feeling like something terrible is about to happen. When in reality, it is just your hormones misfiring. This is what I call the 3 a.m. cortisol spike. And it is one of the most misdiagnosed symptoms in women over 40. I remember one patient in particular. She was 51, a teacher, incredibly sharp, organized, dedicated to her students, the kind of woman who could manage a classroom of 30 teenagers with grace and still have energy left over to help a struggling student after school. But when she walked into my office, she looked like a shadow of herself, dark circles carved deep under her eyes, hands trembling slightly as she held her purse on her lap. Her voice cracked when she started speaking. She told me she had not slept through the night in over 8 months. Every single night, somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30, she would wake up with her heart racing and this overwhelming feeling of dread, a sense that something terrible was about to happen, even though her house was quiet and everyone she loved was safe. She would lie there for 2, sometimes 3 hours, cycling through waves of heat, anxiety, and exhaustion, before finally falling back into a thin, restless sleep just as her alarm was about to go off. She had been to a cardiologist. Her heart was fine. She had been to a psychiatrist. They prescribed anxiety medication that made her groggy and unfocused during the day, but did absolutely nothing for the nighttime awakenings. She had tried melatonin, valerian root, magnesium, sleep restriction therapy, weighted blankets, white noise machines, and even hypnosis recordings. Nothing worked. She told me, with a kind of quiet desperation I will never forget, that she had started to wonder if she would ever sleep normally again, if this was just what life was going to be from now on. When I checked her hormone levels, the picture became immediately clear. Her progesterone was almost non-existent, barely detectable. Her estrogen was wildly fluctuating, surging one week and crashing the next, creating a hormonal roller coaster that her brain could not keep up with. And her cortisol pattern was completely inverted, peaking sharply in the middle of the night instead of the early morning. Her body was in deep hormonal chaos, and her sleep was the first and most devastating casualty. What struck me most was what she said after I explained all of this to her. She sat very still for a moment. Then she looked at me with tears streaming down her face and said, "You mean I am not going crazy?" And that sentence broke my heart because I have heard it from so many women. They genuinely believe something is mentally wrong with them. They feel ashamed of their inability to do something as basic as sleep, when what is actually happening is purely biological, purely hormonal, and entirely, completely addressable. This is exactly why I feel so strongly about sharing this kind of information. Because when you understand the root cause, everything changes. The fear dissolves, the confusion lifts, and the path to real solutions becomes visible. I have actually found something that has been helping many of the women I work with navigate this exact transition, something I have made available through the first link in the description. If what I am describing sounds like your life right now, I genuinely believe it could change the way you experience your nights. Now, let me take you deeper into what this sleep disruption is actually doing to your body, because the 3 a.m. awakening is not just an inconvenience, it is a signal. And if you ignore it long enough, the consequences go far beyond feeling tired. When you are consistently pulled out of deep sleep in the middle of the night, your body loses access to its most critical repair window. Between roughly 11 at night and 3 in the morning, your body performs essential maintenance. cellular repair, immune system recalibration, memory consolidation, growth hormone release, and metabolic waste clearance from the brain through the lymphatic system. This is when your brain literally washes itself of the toxic proteins that accumulate during the day. When cortisol rips you out of this phase night after night, those processes get interrupted. Over time, the effects start showing up everywhere. Your insulin sensitivity begins to deteriorate. Research published in the journal Sleep found that even partial sleep deprivation over just a few nights can reduce insulin sensitivity by up to 25%. This means your body starts handling glucose poorly, which leads to increased fat storage, particularly around the abdomen. And this is something I hear constantly from women in perimenopause. They say, I am eating the same way I always have, I am exercising the same way, but I am gaining weight around my midsection and I cannot stop it. And most of them do not realize that the weight gain is directly connected to the sleep disruption, which is directly connected to the hormonal shift. Then there is the impact on inflammation. Chronic sleep disruption elevates inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein and interleukin-6. These are the same markers associated with cardiovascular disease, joint deterioration, accelerated skin aging, and cognitive decline. A study from the University of California showed that women who consistently slept fewer than 6 hours per night had significantly higher levels of systemic inflammation compared to those who slept 7 to 8 hours. And the women waking up at 3 a.m. are not just sleeping fewer hours, they are losing the most restorative hours, which amplifies the damage. Cognitive function takes a hit as well, as that brain fog you are experiencing, the forgotten words, the misplaced keys, the difficulty concentrating, the feeling that your mind is moving through thick mud, that is not early dementia. That is not a sign that you are getting old. That is your brain being deprived of the deep sleep stages where memory consolidation and neural repair happen. Without those stages, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for decision-making, focus, and emotional regulation, starts functioning at a significantly reduced capacity. You are not less intelligent than you were 5 years ago. Your brain simply is not getting the maintenance it requires to perform at its full potential. And the frustration of knowing you used to be sharper, faster, more capable, that compounds the emotional burden in ways that are hard to put into words. And let us talk about emotional regulation, because this is where many women feel the most devastated. You find yourself snapping at people you love over things that never would have bothered you before, crying at a commercial on television, feeling a wave of sadness or irritation that seems completely disconnected from anything happening in your actual life. You withdraw from friends because you do not have the energy to be social. You cancel plans because the thought of getting through another evening feels overwhelming, and then you blame yourself. You think you are becoming a difficult person. You think your personality is fundamentally changing, but what is actually happening is that your amygdala, the emotional center of your brain, becomes hyperactive when you are sleep deprived, while the prefrontal cortex that normally keeps it in check becomes sluggish and unresponsive. It is a neurological imbalance caused by disrupted sleep, which is caused by disrupted hormones. The chain is clear, the evidence is strong, and the solution starts at the root. This is where hope comes in. Because once you understand that this is not a permanent condition, not a character flaw, not an inevitable part of aging, once you see it as a hormonal rhythm that has been disrupted and can be restored, everything shifts. There are specific approaches that target this exact mechanism. Certain nutrients and natural compounds have been shown to support progesterone pathways and calm the adrenal response. Magnesium glycinate, for example, has been demonstrated in clinical studies to enhance GABA receptor activity, effectively doing some of what progesterone used to do naturally. Ashwagandha, an adaptogenic herb used for centuries in traditional medicine, has been shown in randomized controlled trials to reduce cortisol levels by up to 30% and improve sleep quality significantly. Vitamin B6 plays a critical role in the synthesis of both serotonin and GABA, supporting the very neurotransmitters that are being depleted by hormonal decline. But it is not just about supplements. Timing matters enormously. Eating your last meal at least 3 hours before bed allows your blood sugar to stabilize before sleep, reducing the likelihood of a cortisol spike triggered by a nighttime glucose drop. Exposure to natural light in the early morning, even just 15 minutes, helps reset your circadian clock and reinforce the proper cortisol rhythm, pushing that spike back to where it belongs. And cooling your sleeping environment to around 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit has been shown to support melatonin production and deepen sleep stages. There are also breathing techniques that directly activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the branch of your nervous system responsible for rest and repair. One that I recommend frequently is the 4-7-8 technique. Inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 7, exhale slowly for 8. Done consistently before bed, this pattern has been shown to lower cortisol, reduce heart rate, and prime the body for deeper sleep. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but the physiology behind it is profound. For those of you who want a more structured, guided approach to navigating this, something that brings all of these pieces together in a way that is practical and personalized, I have pinned something in the comments that has been quietly transforming how women in this stage of life reclaim their sleep and their peace. It is something I wish I could hand to every patient who sits across from me with that exhausted, desperate look in her eyes. What I want you to take away from everything I have shared today is this: you are not broken, you are not going crazy, you are not weak for not being able to sleep. Your body is going through one of the most significant hormonal transitions of your entire life, and the medical system has largely failed to recognize the sleep consequences of that transition. The 3 a.m. awakening is not a mystery. It is a message from your body telling you that your hormones need attention, that your cortisol rhythm needs recalibration, that your brain chemistry needs support. And the beautiful thing is that this message, once understood, becomes the first step toward real change. I have seen women who suffered for years with this exact pattern reclaim deep, uninterrupted sleep within weeks of addressing the root cause, not by masking the symptom with sleeping pills, not by numbing themselves with medication, but by giving their bodies what they were actually asking for: hormonal balance, nutritional support, and nervous system regulation. Your body knows how to sleep. It has been doing it your entire life. It just needs the right conditions to remember how. And those conditions are not complicated, not expensive, and not out of reach. They are grounded in science, supported by research, and proven by the experiences of thousands of women who have walked this exact path before you. So the next time you wake up at 3 in the morning, instead of lying there in fear and frustration, I want you to remember what you learned here. That spike of alertness is not your mind betraying you. It is a cortisol wave that arrived too early because your progesterone is too low. That racing heart is not a panic attack. It is your adrenal system responding to a signal that was never meant to fire at that hour. And that feeling of dread, that nameless anxiety that washes over you in the dark, it is not emotional. It is chemical, and chemicals can be rebalanced. You deserve to sleep through the night. You deserve to wake up feeling rested, clear, and calm. And you deserve to know that this is not something you just have to live with. It is something you can change. Starting now, starting tonight. If this resonated with you, if you felt seen, understood, perhaps for the first time, then I want to ask you to do something. Subscribe to this channel, not because I need the numbers, but because there is so much more I want to share with you. The science of hormonal health during this stage of life is vast, and what I covered today is just one piece of it. There are conversations coming about how these same hormones affect your mood, your weight, your energy, your skin, your memory, your relationships, everything. And I want you to be here for all of it. Share this video with a woman you love, your sister, your mother, your friend, your colleague, the one who has been complaining about not sleeping and does not know why. Because the chances are high that what she is experiencing is exactly what we talked about today. And sometimes one video is all it takes to change the way someone understands their own body. Thank you for staying with me until the end. That tells me something important about you, that you are the kind of woman who does not give up on herself, who keeps searching, keeps learning, keeps fighting for answers, and that, more than any supplement or technique, is what will carry you through this transition and out the other side, stronger, wiser, and finally, deeply rested.